Welcome to another edition of Meet the Zor. I'm Nick Powills, publisher of 1851franchise.com, and I'm joined by Jonathan Ellis of Honest Lash. We're going to dive into the whole background and story of Honest Lash, but I want to set this up in a little bit of a different way, Jonathan, because I think your background leads into your viewpoint as a franchisor. So as much as you would like to share about your story, if I said, tell me your story, especially as it relates back to family, franchising, and scale, tell me, give me some of that background.
Absolutely. Well, very lucky, very pleased, very honored, very privileged to be born into a great situation of a McDonald's franchise family. So I am a third generation McDonald's franchisee. My grandfather, Rogers, in 1969 opened his first restaurant in Beaumont, Texas. He was the fourth McDonald's in the state of Texas. And at the time, Texas was the last state that Ray Kroc entered. For some reason, he went nationwide, but was hesitant to go into Texas. And so when he went into Texas, my grandfather at the time was working for a company called National Cash Register, which is a large, global company, still around, still very relevant, still selling cash registers. But he was essentially a register salesman, traveling state to state, developing accounts, developing, relationships across the system, across different restaurant systems, and ultimately came across McDonald's. A great little story. He was volunteering for a Boy Scout event. I believe it was a parent hosted event at the local McDonald's, and one of his buddies happened to be a franchisee in Carbondale, Illinois. And so not only did he have the connection with that, but he also had the National Cash Register connection. So he started really hitting up McDonald's as far as like, hey, I'm interested. This is a great concept. And so at the time, you would just sign up for a waiting list. And when he got the call, with 6 months, a year later, they said, where would you like to go? And he was like, well, what's available? What's open? And they gave him the choices, I believe, of somewhere in New Mexico, somewhere, I believe, in Louisiana, and then somewhere in Texas, Abilene possibly. And then he chose Beaumont, which is right on the Gulf Coast, right on the Louisiana border, about 100 miles east of Houston, right on Interstate 10. And the only reason he chose that is because he was a lifelong, person that lived in the snow belt. And so he wanted out of the snow, and Beaumont, Texas was far south and close to Houston. He knew Houston was a big, metro. And so he was very interested. Anyway, long story short, yes, I am a lucky individual to not only be born into an entrepreneurial family, a restaurant family, a franchise family, but also a franchise family that believes in work ethic, believes in paying it forward, believes in the possibilities of that, what hard work and what a good work ethic and what a good positive mindset brings to the table, and what a little bit of leadership goes a long way. And so between Papa, between Dad and Mom and the family and everybody that's, been involved in the business over the last 52 years. It's just been a blessing, because being raised in that scenario where, you're on the front counter, at 10, you're on the roof fixing air conditioners at 12, you're, running shifts by 16, you're running your own restaurant by 20. So it's just like, there's certain goals that you set early in life just by being exposed to not only the entrepreneurial side of family business, but also just the operational components of, the day-to-day checklist of life. And being able to sit at that dinner table and listen to Dad and Papa and Mom and Uncle Russ and all the cousins, have the conversations about just business and cheeseburgers and just all the daily grind of running a drive-through. That brings us to here and now, and just, growing up in a franchise family, a franchise business, I'm very attracted and have always been put in warm regard franchising. So not only is it McDonald's, of course, McDonald's is McDonald's. I don't have to tell you what McDonald's is, but I look at the arch as more as a family crest, as a family legacy, kind of like this is who we are, this is what we represent, this is what we believe, this is where we're going. Hey, let's go there. You want to be a part of it? And so that's kind of, long story short, McDonald's franchisee, lifelong franchisee in multiple brands, and now first-time franchisor with Honest Lash. And very excited to be here with you, Nick. Thank you for having me, by the way. It's exciting and it's humbling and it's awesome to not only be able to tell your backstory, be proud of it, but then also kind of bake in those ingredients of, okay, that's who we are, that's where we came from, but this is where we're going. So thank you, Nick. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, this is great. I want to unpack some things, but first, what's your earliest memory of being in a McDonald's and also understanding that this was your family's hard work behind it?
Yes, it's earliest memory. I would say it's probably in a play place somewhere on a merry-go-round. That was before the ball pits. Dad always had me test the ball pits before we opened, just because construction, things fell in the ball pits. So, yeah, I remember doing stuff like that. I remember sweeping at an early age. The funny thing about yes, you're having fun, you're playing on the playground, you're probably 5 or 6, but Dad is also having you pick up screws while you're in there, or picking up, zip ties that, somebody dropped or something, because that, you don't want kids getting hurt before you open. And so it's like, yeah, you're proud of the family business, but then you don't realize you're learning all those small, how to run the day-to-day things and how to look at things just based on that upbringing. So yeah, it's pretty cool. First earliest memory, yeah, a lot of picking up French fries off the floor under stuff like that. So
truth or false? You used McDonald's as a pickup line at some point?
100%. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, middle school years don't really remember, but definitely high school, like if we were going on a date, at some point in the night, we were going to a McDonald's either for food or for dessert or, yeah, 100%.
That's
yes.
Awesome. So, okay. So at any point or early on, we're going to get into the franchisor side, but when you're 20 and you're operating a restaurant and you are fully baked into the franchising world as a part of your family, is there any point where you think I'm going to divert from my family and go do something different on my own? And what kept pulling you back to franchising and family?
Well, yes, that's a double-sided question. So, I went to college, graduated at 23. When I say running restaurants, running shifts, I mean, that was very much a part of college and summers. When I was saying I was officially back in the business, I would say mid-20s, committed, confirmed. There was an interim period after college where I moved to Austin for a bit and opened up a food truck on 6th Street and was selling sausage on tortillas till 3 a.m., 3-4 nights a week. So yeah, I had some I would call them beginner entrepreneurial fun project businesses that could have developed into other aspects early on that were very much family supported, family financed, family funded. I by no means like to pretend that I'm a self-starter. Yes, I'm very proud of who we are and the legacy and how I can apply that to now. But as far as sorry, stalled. What was the original question?
No, it was like at some point did you think about diverting from the franchise world?
Well, it was always restaurant mind. It was always go back to McDonald's at some point. I knew, being the oldest of 6 and being 3rd generation McDonald's, that McDonald's was always in the cards. It was always the prize. It was always the goal. And Dad was awesome. And I just watching him do his thing, being a Maverick for a lot of years, being early on 80s, 90s, when they were just expanding at the rate that they were. Because the story is not only McDonald's 3 generations, but the story is, Papa went from 1, then went broke in the first 2 years of opening, just because McDonald's was not a national brand at the time in the early 70s. And as far as taking it from 1 to 2. He went broke several times, had to get his old job back at NCR, had to go work with them for several years, had to uproot the family to Orlando to go take on that territory for a while with NCR while he was still running McDonald's back in Texas. So there was a lot in the early years. There was a lot of, hey, we went from 1 to 2. Dad and Russ came in the mid 70s and took it from 2 to 6. And then in the 80s and 90s, they went from 6 to 20 to expanding beyond Beaumont, then buying the Corpus market in the early 80s, expanding that market up to 20. And then in the late 90s, purchasing the Rio Grande market, which was another 25 to 30 locations. So they not only took that family, but then also scaled it and just had that ride of like, wow, we're opening here and now we're going here and now we're jumping to this new area and now we're doing this. And I'm just sitting there with what, big, wow, look at this rock star. Like, this is awesome. McDonald's is awesome. Like, I'm just always, and even now, like driving by McDonald's, like you're just like in awe of just the manpower, the vision, the scale, and then connecting all those dots with Dad and Papa and their story, and then being able to come into that and then say, okay, that's the prize. That's what you've always wanted. Dad was also like, hey, don't come back till you're 30 and you've gotten your 20s out of your system and you found a wife and you're ready to start a family and you're, and you're ready to put some roots down, because he knew, this was a big thing and don't come back until you're ready. And so I ended up going, after college, going and running, Meatheads, which was the sausage stand for a few years. And then I worked at Freebirds, which is a burrito operation in Texas. I worked there for about a year. And then shortly after that was the economic recession of 08, 09. And so I just realized, why am I fighting for these jobs in Austin, competing with people all over the country for very minimal jobs in Austin, which at the time, Austin was, a cool city growing. And so I was like, you know what? 23, 24, 25. I think it was 25 when I moved back. Sarah and I got married. We started a family, and that's when I really started committing to the McDonald's system. And it didn't matter that I grew up in the system and was able to do it, and then had a little bit of restaurant experience outside of the family business. Dad was like, nope, you're starting on fries. You're like, because I came back from Austin thinking, okay, where's my restaurant? Which one am I going to run? And he's like, you're not running anything. Like, it's day one. Go get in the back, go get in the grill, like go learn everything again, because it's been a few years. Everything's different, because that's the thing about McDonald's. It's always growing, it's always evolving, it's always changing. So there was a bit outside, but yeah, McDonald's was always the mindset. It was always the goal. It was always the prize. And working, from fries to grill to front counter to, shift manager to assistant manager to GM to, yes. Was there some nepotism involved? Of course. Can I deny that? No. But also being aware of that and knowing that all eyes are on me, and they're waiting for this guy, the family, the third gen kid, to just screw it all up and ride the coattails with no work ethic. I took it upon myself. And yes, I know that's like, but I looked at it as, hey, these guys all think I'm this way anyway, so why not prove them wrong? And so you kind of, as much as it's a blessing, it's also like, it's a chip on your shoulder to a certain degree. It's like, okay, well, I'm not going to be the spoiled kid. I'm going to be the guy that works his tail off and proves to you that every promotion, every step of the way was all earned and not just given. And that's a hard challenge in family business. So family business is fun. It's challenging. There's a lot of emotion. There's a lot of relationship. There's a lot of baggage, a lot of history. There's multiple generations. It's everything that family is, plus adding profit to it. So it's just, you throw all that together, and it kind of it binds you, but then it also makes you strong, and it allows you to build a callus to kind of take on. When you're running a drive-through 12 hours a day, there's not a whole lot of things that can break your spirit as it be. So I don't know. I'm sorry if I'm a little long-winded, Nick, but that's long story short. Yeah, I ran a sausage stand for a couple of years out of college, and then I basically came back to McDonald's ever since.
Well, there's things that I want to break out of this, because I think it's important as we shift over to Honest Lash. Is two things I'm hearing very clearly. That's family and work ethic.
Yes.
And so two of those elements always will relate to franchising, no matter who comes into your life from this point on. The family side, every franchisee that I've ever spoken with or our team has spoken with, and we say, talk about your purpose. It's family or family adjacent. It's like, I want to build legacy. I want to build wealth. I want to build something for my kids. I want to build something to have more time with my children. And it always starts there. So you were born into a world where your grandfather and your dad were already committed to this, and you're like, okay, I can see a pathway. The other thing that I hear here is work ethic, not just the chip on the shoulder, which I think anybody that has success has to have a little bit of a chip, because those that don't have success also carry jealousy sometimes. But it's hard to be jealous of someone that's willing to outwork everybody else, or, you know, you can't judge them in that same light. And so you talk about, I got back into the McDonald's world, and my dad didn't say, here's the keys. He said, go learn how to do fries again.
Yes.
I think that's such a critical element, because so many people buy into franchising. Now you've seen various types of franchises, but they buy into franchising thinking, all right, I paid my franchise fee, I spend the money to get this open, and now magically I flip on the light and I make money. And they don't. They have to hustle now. And I think that's where, like, those two aspects of your story are deeply valuable. And obviously, like, the McDonald's thing is something that everybody can relate to, because I think that's your first awareness of what franchising is as a human, purely because of the volume and size of McDonald's. But all those lessons learned, and probably the same lessons you learned going through the next brands that you bought into, and when you're evaluating other concepts and looking at, like, is this leadership team really going to have my back when shit hits the fan? And so you've formulated this opinion that now, as a franchisor, I want to hear how you're relating that back to what you're doing now. So obviously, first, and any comments on that, and then second, go into telling us what Honest Lash is.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, franchisee, franchisor, it's two sides of the same coin. It's very much a relationship. It's very much a marriage. It's very much a binding it's a contract, of course, but it's also, it's at the end of the day, it's a relationship. And that's what Dad always told me, was like, this is a serious decision. This is on the same page of, buying a house. This is on the same page of getting married. This is on the same page of having a child. This is on the same, opening and running your own business is very on par. And franchising is essentially I don't want to call it a shortcut, but what I want to call it, maybe like an extension of, like, hey, you help me and I'll help you. And it's very much, we lean on each other on the good times, the bad times, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And that's why it's very much a marriage and a relationship, is because it's not always going to be great, and it's not always going to be fun, and it's not always going to be hard. The hardest part is the first 2 years, first 18 months, that path to profitability where you're just grinding it out and head down, making decisions. Oh my gosh, what that's colossal. We'll never get past this. Okay, let's get past it. Wow, that was awesome. Now we're past this. We're ready for the next thing. So that's a never-ending cycle. And so understanding that you're entering into this partnership, that's just how Dad always said it. And it's very much not only family business, but franchising has those family business elements. And so, he always mentioned his lifelong franchisor partner in the Houston region. His name was Larry Zimmerman. And apparently he had opportunities for promotions galore up in Oak Brook in Chicago, but he passed on them for many years because he just loved Texas. He loved his franchisees in Texas. He loved the scale and growth that Texas was doing with the growth over his 30 years there. And Dad built a long relationship with him. And it was very much give and take. And it was very much, hey, I will partner with on this. Hey, let's go to Coca-Cola on that. Hey, if you throw in a few dollars on this, we'll throw in some dollars on that. We'll throw some labor behind it. You throw some marketing behind it. It's all like, that's all it is. It's just very much, it's a logo. Yes. It's a playbook. Yes. But it's mostly support. And so seeing that in the McDonald's system, growing up in that system, of course, they're not only the originals, but they set the bar in a lot of ways and a lot of capacities on a lot of fronts in franchising. So it's just, when you go outside of the McDonald's world and start comparing, we learned 5-6 years ago when we started looking at other brands beyond the McDonald's scope, we learned very quickly we couldn't just compare everybody to McDonald's. And I know that's biased, but like there's a reason they're the biggest and the best. And granted, they're they come and go and they have their ebbs and flows, but they're still McDonald's and they're not going anywhere anytime soon. And so comparing that to other brands, Dad went out on his own for a bit and entered into power sports. He got into Kawasaki, Suzuki, American Iron Horse, and Yamaha. He did that for about 10 years, and then economic recession of 08, 09, first thing that people stop buying when pocketbooks are tight are jet skis and four-wheelers, and then the other thing that happens real quickly is the loans dry up. Those $5,000 loans dry up for toys. So we kind of learned that, and I got to watch Dad do that while I was still young and in college, and I kind of thought about doing that for a minute because McDonald's is hard. It's not easy. You're on your feet all day. You're dealing with 1,000 customers a day. You're making 1,000 different cheeseburgers a day, and so watching him go through that full cycle of buying it, growing it, and then watching it shrink, and then ultimately selling it because of a recession. So that was a full scale getting to watch from the front row experience. And then fast forward a decade, I'm kind of ready to kind of jump out on my own beyond McDonald's because Dad was starting to think about exiting. And so I found, it took me about a year and I looked at a number of brands, but I came across a deal in DFW and it was a Sylvan Learning Center tutoring deal. There was 8 locations for sale in DFW and looked at it. It felt good. It felt comparable. It felt like it was operations. It felt like it was education. It was family friendly. It was very good P&Ls, good leadership, good ownership. It checked a lot of boxes as far as, okay, if I'm going to step outside of McDonald's, this one feels right. And then that was 2017, early 2018. Personally left McDonald's, moved to Fort Worth, family and all. And we decided to go all in on Sylvan, just myself, and with a little help from family, but mostly, putting all of my personal eggs into that basket. And rocking along, 18 months, 2 years. Decided 6 months later, the Austin market became for sale, and so being excited, young, motivated, seeing things moving in the right direction, saw Austin, got excited, got a little too in front of myself, I guess, and decided to go get it. And sometimes you do that, and granted, yes. Do I regret it? No. Do I wish I wouldn't have doubled down the first year? Yes. But you know what? If I wouldn't have bought Austin, we wouldn't be here talking about, Honest Lash. So fast forward to 2020, we were Sylvan Learning, even though it was an education business and kids needed education, we were not considered an essential business. And so our business was shuttered for several months. And then beyond that, when we opened back up, the demand wasn't there. And so I guess, long story short, experiencing, McDonald's, even in the down cycles of the economy and in the worst of times, McDonald's still was somewhat recession proof because everybody can afford dollar cheeseburgers. Like that's just, everybody shrinks their pocketbook and they're still coming to us. So we were somewhat experiencing peaks at a lot of times when most of the economy was experiencing lulls. And so we didn't learn the down cycles of business so much as to when we experienced it in other business worlds, such as power sports and jet skis and motorcycles, or tutoring and Sylvan. And then even, another business I haven't mentioned yet we bought into was another franchise model based out of Florida called Signorama. And it was just a sign business that we bought one location in Fort Worth. And it was really, the acquisition of the business was because I wanted a sign business because I knew we had a lot of locations and there's a lot of print materials and there's a lot of promotional materials, and just coming from McDonald's where we swap out our POP monthly, I'm thinking of the mindset, okay, I want to be able to print on demand and scale it quickly and always have fresh, content. This is pre-digital, of course. But anyway, long story short, I've experienced a little bit of a lot of franchises, most of it being McDonald's. So they're the basis of comparison. But then when you bring in these other models, you can cherry pick the best of from other leadership, from other industries, from other adjacent businesses. And so anyway, the tail end of your question, Honest Lash is essentially a COVID pivot. I mean, we were 1,000% born because of 2020. Mm. And so I don't like to say that Honest Lash, we were born out of tenacity, out of being painted into a corner, out of not knowing where we were going or what. I mean, we think 3 years ago. I know it's easy to forget some of those early days in the pandemic, but I can still remember March 11th when Trump came on and said no travel to Europe, because that was spring break. My kids and I were in Austin on the water enjoying our spring break with the kids, and that came on. I'm like, scratching your head, what's that about? Very late to the table on any of the national news, being in Texas. And next thing you know, 3 days later, we're on a national call with Sylvan leadership talking about this is what they've been dealing with up in Seattle for the last 30 days with shutdowns, and this is what we're seeing going across the country. And I'm just like, wait, what? Just like I've never in my mind thought the world's going to shut down. Like that just does not cross your mind when you're making business decisions, that they're just going to stop. And so Honest Lash is very much a business that was born because of the pandemic. And when I say that, it's because Sylvan was only 2 years into my ownership of the business, meaning, yes, it was profitable, it was lucrative, it was doing its thing. We were bringing on our team, we were growing it, we were adding locations. We opened up a location in Bastrop, Texas, literally the last day of 2019, because I had a 2020 deadline to get it open with corporate. And so regardless of that, we're at 15 locations when the shutdown begins. And I take the PPP, I shutter operations. We do somewhat of scaled. We had, I had 300 employees, most of them being part-time. Most of them, luckily, were full-time teachers at a local ISD. So as far as my labor force, a lot of this was part-time work for them. So I was able to take care of my salaried employees, my directors, my leadership, everybody at the top. But most of them are part-time. We had to shutter during the duration of the pandemic. So fast forward 6 months, back to school's happening. We, hand in hand with Sylvan, are building virtual programs. We're building all types of very unique. Yes, we're offering our services to the customer, but I don't think there was a single franchisee in the system that felt confident about what we were doing or how we were delivering it or the level of what we were delivering it. And then just when our whole business model is based on delivering academic excellence, it's real, the rug was pulled out from under us. And so now we're delivering it virtually. Like we're all used to it now, but 3-4 years ago, this was all brand new in the education space. And so regardless of that, October, November rolls around, no back to school demand comes with Sylvan. That's usually when report cards come out. That's usually when we hit our first pop of business in the fall season. And when that didn't happen, and then fast forward a few months, the election, everything, it's just, we're like, wow, it's looking like it's going to be like this for a long time. And so ultimately, the week of the election, I called corporate and said, hey, guys, I need out. I'm drowning. I've run out of PPP. I still have this bank loan that I'm only 2 years into. I've bought 2 markets. Yes, we're paying some bills, but it's bringing down the ship, and I got to make some decisions quickly. And so luckily worked with corporate and was able to facilitate a deal to where we sold 12 of the 15 Sylvans back to corporate and remaining and neighboring franchisees. And with the 3 in Austin area that didn't sell, we converted to Lash Studios. And you say, why did I convert them to Lash Studios? We needed to be out of Sylvan. I needed to exit out of that system. I also needed to be in control of our local decisions, because one of the downsides of franchising is when something like that happens, if they're making decisions on a national scale, it's very hard to get in the weeds on the local level, regardless of how big your market is. And so I realized going into that decision, okay, I wasn't quite at the point of we're going to go franchise Lash Studios. I was at the point of how do I keep these 3 studios from just being dead rent, because I'm only a year into 5-year leases. So how do I not owe hundreds of thousands of dollars on these leases? What business can I plug into these 3 spaces in Austin, which are Bastrop, Texas, Dripping Springs, Texas, and Georgetown, Texas? Those were the 3 Sylvans that I had to close down because they weren't doing that well pre-pandemic, post-pandemic. They were just not doing anything at all. And so anyway, long story short, Honest Lash is a pandemic-born business. It was built out of we have nowhere else to go. I looked at this lash business as I can pull all of my desks and chairs and learning equipment out, and I can install lash chairs and lash equipment, and it's very much a low investment cost to swap out furniture, fixtures, and equipment. And then I knew a couple of people in Austin that were cosmetologists and estheticians, and I just realized, hey, let's go open a lash business. And anyway, let me pause there because I know I'm talking forever.
No, it's good. I like unpacking the story.
Yeah.
Now, and I want to get to wrap up. We're going to have to do a part 2 on this, but I want to get to wrap up question. But I want to frame this up because I think this is essential. One, you're showing what happens when you hit a bottom and you have to pivot. And I think that insight as a franchisor is deeply valuable back to a franchise buyer because they want to know, like, how much flexibility are you willing to do? There are franchisors that stick it out and say, this is the way we've always done it, therefore we don't shift. I call those brands the blockbuster brands. They get Netflixed. And you don't want to be blockbustered, and you said, okay, I have to still feed my family, which it still comes back to that and work ethic. And he said, let's create a new business. Now, what I also love about this is you created it pandemic born. And what that means for a wellness business built in the bottom, hopefully the worst thing that we see in our lifetimes. But it was a rough time, and it was a solution. And it was built for scale, and it solved some of the business challenges that you're going through. So I would imagine that relates back to what franchisees should expect about being your partner in this type of business. So on part 1 of this, because I think we should continue the conversation and dive into challenges faced as a franchisee that also relates back. But to define this part, tell me the why now. Why should anyone care about buying an Honest Lash, and why should they care about it now?
Nick, I love that question because I'm very much a fan of Simon Sinek and Start With Why, and being an older millennial and growing up in that generation of having to connect with the brand and why we're doing stuff. So we're very clearly a family business, and I don't care the what, it's clearly the why. And so the why is, okay, Dad taught me how to do it. I now have 3 children of my own. I now am in the driver's seat somewhat of the Ellis business. Where are we going this? And I'm sitting here thinking, okay, I'm benefiting from Dad and Papa and Granddad and all the decisions. It's up to me now to pass it forward and pay it forward. And it's the benefits and the luxuries of life that McDonald's, and I don't mean just money, profit, like financial wealth. I mean what McDonald's has baked into our life and our livelihood and how we do things and how we view things and how we accept challenges head on. That's what I want to pay forward. And so, and franchising very much it encapsulates that to it's a family, it's a franchise, it's systems, it's operations, it's all the things. But then how can I make sure that Emma, Jack, and Julia are doing the exact same thing? I want them running front counter somewhere. I want Jack on the roof fixing HVAC somewhere. I want them learning the roots of what it takes to run a family business, and not only be successful at it. That success comes later. It's the constant coming back for more that I want to pay for. And so why you, why now? It's for them. Yes. Were we painted into a corner, and did we have to make some hard decisions during some hard times? Yes. Do I want to go back to that time? No. Am I still working through some of that? Yeah. Am I still going to be paying bad debt for a minute? Of course. Yeah, I still have bad debt on my books from the Sylvan. But what we're doing now is we're accepting that challenge and saying, okay, when we were faced with adversity, did we fold? Did we cower? Did we take it? Or did we face it and say, you know what? I don't like all of this that's going on. I can't control all of this, but what I can do is control this. And in this circle, in this world, whether it's Honest Lash, whether it's McDonald's, or whether it's the Ellis family dinner, we're going to do it a certain way. And so why you, why now? It's for them. It's 100% for them. And it's not for, I want to give them a business that they can run when they grow up. It's not that. It's because I want to introduce them to the things that Dad and Papa introduced me to, so that when situations like the pandemic happen, they know exactly what to do. And when one of my children come to me in 30 years, when the next crisis happens and they're saying, I want to go do this, I'm going to say, you know what, go for it. Because I went to Dad during a pandemic and said I wanted to open an eyelash studio. So there's nothing in the entrepreneurial family franchise world that scares us. And so that's who we are. That's where we come from, and that's where we're going. So it's all for them.
Yeah. And I want to just close with this statement. And then again, I think there's going to be a part 2 of our conversation, but what you're hearing is, again, it goes back to family, work ethic, and loyalty. And if you're a franchisee that's watching this, a prospective franchisee that's watching this, that's what you're buying into with Honest Lash. It doesn't, like, the widget ends up being irrelevant. Like, you have to make sure the widget is something that has demand, just like McDonald's needed to have a $1 burger. The widget's irrelevant. It's the process and the history that you're buying into. And Jonathan, I appreciate this part of the discussion. Let's continue this on a part 2. But for Jonathan, I'm Nick. Thanks for watching, and we'll continue this episode of Meet the Zor. See you, everybody.
Thank you, Nick.